Wrong ones part ways, right ones find their way. Today I want to share with you an article called Mother. Why does my mother-in-law always dislike me after marriage? My dear daughter, yesterday you called in the middle of the night, crying so hard before you even said a word. You said you had a quarrel with your mother-in-law, and you were so disappointed in your marriage that you wanted to divorce Jianfei. I was extremely worried. After listening carefully, you finally revealed the reasons. Yesterday you came home late from work, tired and hungry. Instead of understanding, your mother-in-law started complaining the moment you entered the door, saying you neglected your duties and left all the housework for her to do alone. Although you have a job during the day, earning money is not everything. You cannot take it for granted that you don't have to do housework and take care of the household properly. She even suggested you should quit your job if you can't handle it. You explained that you were too busy with work these days, but you would find time to help, so she shouldn't worry, especially since Jianfei could also lend a hand when he's not busy. But instead of understanding, your mother-in-law got angry. She even complained about having to do housework for you too. She said you were taking advantage of her generosity. Upon hearing this, you couldn't help but argue with her, while Jianfei remained silent on the side. Eventually, he just left the house saying, "You guys keep arguing. I'm going downstairs to smoke." You cried on the phone, feeling like your mother-in-law genuinely dislikes you from the bottom of her heart and doesn't consider you part of the family. Jianfei either takes his mother's side or avoids confrontation whenever there's an issue. You don't know what you've done wrong. After hearing the whole story, I was shocked. I'm sure you've had many ups and downs in your daily life, but you've always kept them to yourself and never said a word. After much contemplation that night, I couldn't sleep. I decided to take this opportunity to have a good talk with you. Treating your mother-in-law as your own mother means you've already lost. A few days ago, I watched a variety show. A girl called in to complain about her constant conflicts with her mother-in-law over childcare philosophies. Every time she suggested a more scientific approach, her mother-in-law stubbornly said, "What do you know? Look at my son. Isn't he doing well?" This kind of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship is unbearable. Later, the host said something that resonated with me. He said that a mother-in-law not liking her daughter-in-law shouldn't be seen as her fault, because a mother-in-law doesn't have an obligation to like her daughter-in-law. The daughter-in-law's duty is to earn her mother-in-law's favor, not the other way around. This may sound harsh at first, but it makes sense upon reflection. A mother-in-law doesn't have an obligation to like her daughter-in-law, just as the daughter-in-law has the right not to like her mother-in-law. After all, the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law is a byproduct of marriage with no blood relation. It's unreasonable to expect two people with a 20-year emotional foundation to suddenly treat each other like close relatives. Do you remember the day you and Jianfei came to our house to announce your marriage? Your dad asked whether you would live with us or buy your own house after marriage. He asked if you could afford a house. Jianfei seemed nervous, constantly looking at you and saying he needed to ask his parents' opinion. At that moment, your dad and I were worried. We felt he lacked decisiveness and was evading the issue. Which parent doesn't want their children to be happy? But after careful consideration, I decided to give you this advice: avoid men who lack responsibility early on. Don't waste time waiting for him to mature, because all you'll get from him is disappointment. You're not just a wife, you're yourself. On the phone, you also asked me whether you should quit your busy job for the sake of the family. I told you then that it wouldn't solve the problems between you, Jianfei, and your mother-in-law. When I was young, I once considered giving up my job and life for the sake of marriage and family, especially during the time when you were born. But the longer I stayed at home, the more anxious I became. Spending every day around the stove, I became increasingly unhappy. Thankfully, your dad was a responsible man who believed I should have my own career and do what I love. So my time as a housewife was short. Your dad and I worked hard while raising you, sharing the chaos of household chores. It was tough but fulfilling. I always believed that women should never regard marriage and family as their entire lives. We live for ourselves, not for anyone else. Our meaning and value in life are not just about family and marriage. We should have our own lives, not just housework. Whether you're happy in love or feel wronged, only you know. No matter what decision you make regarding this relationship, I'll support you. My dearest daughter, you never have to fulfill anyone's expectations. Your happiness in life should always be in your own hands. That concludes today's article, and I hope it brings you new insights every day. If you found this article valuable, feel free to leave a comment. Here, you'll never be alone.